Some breaking news and a dispute tonight.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Taco Comfort Solutions.
You know, it dawns on me when I say breaking news, it might be the most overused term in broadcast television, right? In fact, some of the networks, CNN, I think they're breaking news all the time, which to me begs the question, what do you do when it's really breaking news? Do they do a graphic that says, really, really, really breaking news? So, we tape the show in the afternoon, so welcome in on this Tuesday evening. But as we speak, we just heard that Fran Gallo, the former superintendent at Central Falls and administrator in Providence, has been named the interim superintendent in Providence. And we'll get that in a second, but dawns on me that may not be breaking for you right now because it's been reported. Anyway, Chris Maxwell is here from the Rhode Island Truckers Association, and he is he's got a dispute with the DOT director on some assertions that he made earlier this year, or this month, or last week, or recently. So we'll get to that in a moment. We'll also take a look at the toll numbers and get the truckers' perspective on why the numbers are better for the state than the state said they would. It's a numbers game. You know that, right? Let's get to it, though. The President of the United States, and now they're called the Squad. Here's the network's latest.
President Trump is imploring Republicans not to vote on a House resolution condemning his recent tweets targeting 4 Democratic congresswomen, saying they should go back from where they came. Tuesday, he took to Twitter, again writing, "Those tweets were not racist. I don't have a racist bone in my body. The so-called vote to be taken is a Democrat con game. Republicans should not show weakness and fall into their trap."
We have the responsibility to uphold the dignity of government.
The resolution, quote, strongly condemns President Donald Trump's racist comments that have legitimized and increased fear and hatred of new Americans and people of color.
He's launching a blatantly racist attack on 4 duly elected members of the United States House of Representatives, all of whom are women of color.
The president appears to be making attacks on the progressive congresswomen known as the Squad, a 2020 campaign issue. But not all Republicans see it as a winning strategy.
We're going to have problems electorally down the line, so I think that's one reason. But also, as I learned in kindergarten, treat people with respect, right?
But even Republicans who disagree with the comments say they may not vote for the measure.
Do you plan to vote on the resolution?
I'll see what the resolution is, but I'm generally not that supportive, especially of a resolution going after another branch of government. But we'll see.
House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy called the resolution, quote, a political stunt.
Political stunts all the way around. Look, the vote notwithstanding, here's the situation, I think. Understand, my personal politics, not that they're a matter of concern to you, but my personal politics don't buy into the squads. I mean, I just don't, I'm not on their political spectrum on X number of matters. This progressive movement is something that on an issues basis worries the heck out of me. But what worries me more is that this president can't let it go ever. He has to win all the time. And in fact, he sees this as an opportunity to cultivate an American regeneration of disposition of anger and conflict. This one, look, predictions about Donald Trump and the constituents are bad business. I've learned that lesson for sure. But the thing that I think is really interesting about this is that there's a 5 to 15% population of people who voted for Donald Trump who, when they see a bigot, it's like, it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it sounds like a duck, it looks like a duck, it's a duck. They know a bigot when they see it. And it may be enough for them to say, you know what, I just can't do this. As Joe Biden, if he comes out, looks more reasonable. So I think Donald Trump, in solidifying his base and creating this kind of environment, knowing that they're going to fight back, may be playing a game that's not going to benefit him. We'll see over the course of time here. Let's come home for a second. The CNE lifespan headline is my note here. This is too bad. Care New England, who decided to go its own way after a breakdown with Lifespan Conversations a year ago, decided to go with Partners of Boston and Brigham and Women's, right? And they just blew that thing up to come back to the seat with, or the table with the governor and Lifespan to take it one more time. Dr. Jim Finale, back in June, the CEO of Care New England, was both here and on the radio talking about, you know, the challenges and the new chance to get together with Lifespan.
As you know, we worked very hard to move forward on our acquisition. And a couple of weeks ago, we were asked to consider really whether there's value in trying to come together with our counterparts in Rhode Island. Now, I can tell you, we thought long and hard about it, and we think there's certainly a vision that could deliver great health care for the people of Rhode Island. And when we discussed that with our folks, our colleagues at the Brigham, they encouraged us to do it. So we did, and we've agreed.
So there you go. But for some reasons, all the details to come, they couldn't make a deal, and they officially walked away from the table with Lifespan. And so now they say, in the interim, they've cured some of their financial issues. They may just want to go this road on their own. We'll see. Jim Finale seems to me to be a pretty fair dealer. So I'm looking forward to getting more answers from him. But it is too bad that this solution or resolution or consistency that Rhode Island is looking for in its medical future with hospitals is now up in the air again. I'm not saying that the merger failing is necessarily a problem, because I wanted to, as so many did, to see the details of what the merger actually means, right? Anyway, it's very complicated, and it's so important. It's our medical future. Speaking of the future and things so important, Providence Schools, this just in, Fran Gallo is named the interim superintendency of, I think that's going to be a year or so. In the meantime, Jorge Alorza was shoveling the manure today on WPRO when he was talking about the school facilities that are rat-infested, asbestos-laden, and completely uninhabitable right now. All you got to do is check the Johns Hopkins report. Here's his lofty view on it.
So on the school infrastructure issues, we've been on top of that. On the conditions inside of our schools, you know, remember I just mentioned, you know, I've been calling for the need for transformation in our schools for well over 2 years now, and the goal was to start that transformation process through the budget negotiation, not the budget, the contract negotiations. And I came to realize the state rules, state laws around contract arbitration are just so weighted against cities that it's impossible to make the change that we need. We don't have the tools, we don't have the authority, we don't have the power to make that transformational change. And you know, once that reality settled in, that's when the conversations with the state really picked up of the only other option that we have is asking the state to come in and invoke those additional powers.
He was asked about the rats, the contracts and the evergreen stuff, all of which, you know, are problematic, no doubt, have nothing to do with the rats, nothing to do with the asbestos, nothing to do with the respect for humanity and our little ones and not so little ones that we send to school every day. Okay? That he hasn't got the rat patrol out there right now and they made a big deal about it shows you that he is like the male version of Janet from another planet. And he will be more than gently moved aside no matter what the state formula is. Because most people intimate with the problems of the city's schools know that he is useless. Whew. And the last state issue that's really intriguing here and is very complicated, we showed you these headlines yesterday, IGT and Twin River kind of going after each other. IGT is the computer brain and the machine product developer. They're the ones that have the VLTs, the video slots at Twin River. Really fascinating stuff. The Twin River has been putting out ads and has suggested that the governor's behind-the-scenes negotiations with IGT to continue a contract there are foul play. The governor made a really good point about Twin River's discussion of actually doing it themselves.
this isn't the business they're in, and this is the third biggest source of revenue for Rhode Island. I think it would be incredibly risky to turn over this to a business that has zero track record in it.
She is correct. She is correct. And, Twin River is just looking to make some more money. They actually would like to take responsibility for doing the machines, but they don't do the machines, so then they'll come back to IGT and say, you want to do the machines? Which is really a way of subcontracting and getting some more dough. So they just want to cut. They just want to cut. And the cut may not be there. But it's going to be fascinating to see how this negotiation goes. We'll get players from both sides in here sooner or later and on the radio to discuss that. But there are no bad guys in this controversy. But then again, when they're chasing money, there's generally no good guys either, right? When we come back, we'll take a look at the latest tolling numbers, roadworks, that whole thing, the truckers' position, and a dispute the Trucking Association has with the DOT director. Can you imagine that? Stay with us. It was terrible. Okay, let's look at this latest bit of information on the toll data.
Work is being done on the posts of the new toll before the gantry going over the highway is put on tonight. It's on Route 6 in Providence over the Woonasquatucket River Bridge. It'll be the third toll up as part of Rhode Island's truck tolling program to help repair bridges.
And they've been doing a bit better financially than we anticipated.
According to RIDOT Director Peter Alviti, the first two tolls in the southern part of the state have brought in about $7.2 million, about $200,000 more than projected. The toll over Route 6 is going to charge trucks $5. That's up $3 because RIDOT has axed plans to build a toll by the 610 connector, which would have charged trucks $3.
We're combining them into a single location because they were less than a mile apart, and we'll save $2.5 million in construction.
RIDOT has said it's only tolling the trucks because they do more damage to the roads. The trucking industry and state are in an ongoing legal battle over the tolling program. Alviti says he's confident the state will win out. In a written statement to Eyewitness News about the new toll, Rhode Island Trucking Association President Christopher Maxwell wrote, "Truck-only tolling was the first initiative in the Raimondo branch, which is just now being exposed nationally for its systematic failures. Regardless of gantry construction and revenue claims, this scheme, like UHIP and Providence Public Schools, has cost Rhode Island countless millions and its national reputation, which will take generations to restore."
They worked from day one that we turned the switch on for the last year, and we expect that they're in a stable condition to be able to begin to ramp up.
Right. So you've gotten very rhetorically sophisticated.
Well, it comes when you're a media mogul like I am.
Maxwell, it used to be Maxwell said, don't believe these guys, the numbers are no good. Now it's like, I can't even figure out what the hell you're saying. It's pretty good.
Well,
pretty
good.
good.
I'm getting pretty good at the game.
Anyway,
but today
welcome,
I'm here to talk
friend.
about facts.
Yes, so
Yeah.
we're going to talk about a representation that...
Misrepresentation.
A misrepresentation, you think, that the director made on the radio the other day. But tell me what your gut check is about the actual data on the two tolls in South County and them quote, performing at a better rate. Did that put another blowhole in your argument?
No, not at all. No, because I think that, a couple of things. I think that the revenue, that's what's been billed. First of all, I think that $7.5 million is what has been billed. It's not what's been collected. We hear that it may be as little as half of that. So that could be a problem in terms of toll aversion, the systems they put into place, all that.
Well, why are you telling me that there's a higher cost of doing business, you think? I mean, if it's billed, it's billed.
Well, if it's billed, it's billed.
It's billed, it means trucks are passing.
But they're saying that they've collected 7.5. We understand that that's what's been billed. What's actually collected in the coffers is another story. There are factors that may play into that, such as toll aversion, which means you don't pay toll diversion, which they claim isn't happening. But let's see what the real revenues are.
The diversion is bypassing the toll,
right?
Driving away from it.
Aversion is not paying.
Just
not paying.
Yeah, when in high school we used to call it chew and screw.
That's right.
Yeah,
right. Gotcha. Now, as far as the performance goes, you're not going to have wholesale diversion by our industry for two gantries north and south. Okay, so you haven't seen the level of diversion around the state or off the interstate onto secondary roads yet that you will once you have a network of 14 tolls. That's clearly that. So to this point, 7.5 is what they claim. more
yeah,
power
that's what
to
I
them.
said the other day. I don't think you can say ha 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 to the
No.
truckers yet, because a couple of tolls, they go, yeah, whatever. A series of, and as much as $40 back and forth in the state in one day.
That's correct.
That's a whole nother ballgame.
That's correct. Yeah.
What do you think the Route 6 add-on will do? Even 3 tolls may not be the thing. It could be. I don't know what that magic number.
Route 6 was a weird one, because that area with the congestion itself is going to breed diversion because of the 610 construction. So you put a gantry in kind of a weird location. That one, above all, is going to hurt the local businesses. We're arguing, that it's hurting interstate, but that one's going to hurt a lot of your local guys that are construction guys.
We have to remind everybody, because people forget this, that the total look. I think Director Alviti has done a pretty good job with a 10-year plan. He's been communicative. He's an outreach guy. He'll fight you on some issues. I mean, I kind of like his act.
I
really do.
That, yes.
I kind of like his act. The truth of the matter is, though, he and I have a philosophical argument over the idea, why would you go through all of this and put so much economic and reputational pressure on Rhode Island for really what is only 10% of the entire program?
Agreed.
I mean, if I'm the governor, and I've said this to him, if I'm the governor and you come to me and say, you know what, in order to be able to make this thing work, I want to do these tolls. And I'm saying, yeah, well, how much is that against the? Well, you know what? We'll find the 10% somewhere. I'm not gonna exhaust the economy or put it at risk or put the nation's
a black eye. Give this state a black eye. You've got tolling. You've got the Providence schools nationally. You've got the Wall Street Journal on Evergreen. Our reputation is suffering, and this was the original Raimondo brand rollout, truck-only tolling. Where it goes, who knows? We'll talk maybe about where it is in the courts, but it's not a good thing. And remember, the first ask for Federal Highway was for 200 gantries statewide. So think about where we're going with 14 on trucks. What was the original conceived plan? And that came from Federal Highway.
Speaking of federal and this and that, you've got a dispute on interpretation of law with the director, and we'll talk about that when we come back. So you know what these toll things look like, right? You know what a highway looks like, and sooner or later, they're going to try to get all 14 gantries up. I had thought that the Roadworks program would fail in that if the court case didn't go their way. We'll talk about where litigation might be with Chris here in a moment, but you have a dispute over an assertion that the DOT director made, correct?
I do.
Let's roll it from WPRO last week?
On Jim Hummel's show, covering for Matt Allen.
Okay, got that? Jim Hummel in for Matt Allen.
On WPRO.
Too much vacation time over there at WPRO, that's all I got to say. But here's what the director said.
Right, so the one on West on Route 6 near Moreno Park, that's for the it's just not going to cover a fraction of it. I mean, some of it, but that's for what we see at 610. That's why it's located there, right?
Correct. So over the years, that money will continue to go into the project account for 610 to reimburse 10% of the value of that. Let me put it this way. Whatever percentage that the trucks have caused damage to that infrastructure is being apportioned from that toll into the project account for that project.
Right.
So the money is going directly from the toll collection directly to bridge reconstruction only. It's not. It has, under state law and under federal law, we need to use that money only for the purpose of the bridge reconstruction. That's what we're doing. So we've set up project accounts for these various toll locations to have the money deposited directly into the project accounts for those particular projects.
What do you dispute?
His statement that the money's the Roadworks was built on dedicated truck toll money going toward crumbling bridges. Okay, that was what it was sold and passed on. In Roadworks law and in federal law, Title 23, which is that little dangling modifier on our own 42-13.19, says we need to use this money for bridge reconstruction to certain levels of completion and sufficiency, or at the end, it says, or any other use permitted under 23 U.S.C. 129. Now, the DOT director and here we are 24 hours later, has not refuted my claim, which was released yesterday. That clause right there basically says that the state, at its discretion, can start scooping these dedicated funds, which this, again, legislation was sold on a dedicated fund from truck tolls that, quote, do the damage to bridges. Now, all of a sudden, he, in this law, and we've said this before, this is nothing new, that this money can be scooped to other projects under Title 23. Landscape projects, $23 million pedestrian bridges if they want to do it. Transit, rail, if they want to build a Peter Alviti
that they can doesn't mean they're doing it yet. He's suggesting that there's
isn't can a dangerous thing? What he's saying is, in each and every case of a gantry location, once they reach a certain level, they can start, wink, wink, start scooping money. And this goes back to the original.
True. It's got to be, because once they fix the bridge to the point that the toll revenue, they're still going to have tolls rolling in. So that's why they've got that wiggle room.
But his comment is contradictory to the law. He says it can only go into bridges. That is deceptive. It's not truthful.
And why is that? And why do people need to understand?
Because this whole scheme was sold on trucks doing damage, monies from tolls going directly to bridges and only to bridges, and his own law contradicts that. The original sin with our DOT insolvency is we started scooping funds to the general fund and everywhere else, and not taking care of our bridges.
True.
You go back to the original sin where you originally, now 20 years later, our bridges are crumbling. Well, why? Well, that toll money, we started using it here, there, and everywhere. We got a problem again. If they're going to take our money from our industry based on that premise, it better stay where they said it was.
What he's saying now is...
His comment, though, get to his comment. His comment contradicts the law. The law states that they can move it to Title 23. Right. He said only bridges and bridges only.
He attributed his discretion to the law. You're correct. But I think what he's saying is, at least for now, they're only using it for the bridges.
We don't know.
And I don't know how you track that.
Well, listen, this is a shell game from the beginning. And again, let's go back. You can't track that. They know you can't track that. You don't know till you got a big problem decades down the road when you go back to the original sin.
I got 15 seconds. What's the latest moral of the story of the toll?
We hope
saga?
we're in the appellate court in Boston. We're appealing to have it heard in the federal court. We suspect and hope that it will be heard as early as September. That has been the request of the ATA to that circuit. Unless RIDOT maneuvers to block that, to keep this thing moving and continually deflect between the jurisdiction, we should hear something in September. We live another day.
You and Dr. Alviti keep each other on their toes.
We do.
Yes, you do.
We do.
When we come back, the final word. So tomorrow, the Leadership Institute from Bryant University, Gary Sass, former Director of Revenue for the Kateri administration, will come in here to talk about his view on the Providence schools. He and former Providence Mayor Joe Paolino have an op-ed out calling for their own version of a state takeover of those schools. We'll pick his brain and stay up to date with all that's going on. It's a busy July, unusually busy. So we'll see you on the radio too at 3 on WPRO. Thanks for tuning in. Good night.